Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. Thank you to Jagdeep Singh from Toronto. इन्हों ने बड़ी वधिया गल की है कि जेडी कि आप शब्दावली यूज़ करते अपने लाइफ टू लाइफ ओदा अपने ते केड़ा इफेक्ट आंदा है। मैं भी एक बुक पढ़ी सी जेड़ा कि मैं एक छोटी जी लाइन शेयर करना चाहूँगी कि जिवें पहले जेडे सिंह होंदे सी वो कहंदे सीगे कि ये सी कड़ाके च पर अज आप कहने कि सानू भुख लगी आ। सो जेडे खालसे दे जेडे बोल वाले सीगे उन्हां दे विच डिफरेंस हुंदा सी ते ओ तो पता चलदा सी कि हमेशा चढ़दी कला च रहिंदे सीगे। So it was a really good presentation. Thank you to Jagdeep Singh. And he has made great contributions, like you see, to the World Sikh Parliament and United Sikhs. ਤੇ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੈਜੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਐਟ ਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਆਫ ਦੀ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਯੂ ਕੈਨ ਆਸਕ ਦ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ। ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਬੁਲਾਰੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੁਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਟੇਜ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਲਸੋ ਸਾਈਨ ਅਪ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ ਇਨਟੂ ਆਰ WhatsApp groups ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਦਾਂਗੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ। So now for 15 minutes we will have Jasveer Singh and he will be covering the topic media challenges from the Panth. And Jasveer Singh works in Sikh Press Association and BBC. So we want to welcome Jasveer Singh from World Sikh Parliament. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
Sangat ji, sab to pehla जिन्हां नूं नहीं अंग्रेजी आउंदी पुलचक माफ संगत जी आज मेरा presentation मैं अंग्रेजी च करूँगा। My Punjabi skills do not extend into public speaking yet, but let's see how it goes for next year. I'd also like to say thank you to the World Sikh Parliament. It is a complete honor to be asked to speak at such an event for an organization with such vision and ambition for the Panth. So thanks for having me here to speak to you all today. Just waiting for the slides to come up and we'll begin the presentation. No problem. So my name is Jasveer Singh. I have been the senior press officer for the Sikh Press Association since 2015. This is an employed role. I was hired by the charity Everything's 13. You may know Everything's 13 for their project Basics of Sikhi, the most popular project that they're known for. They run 4 projects. We are one of those 4. That's Basics of Sikhi, the Sikh Press Association, Mighty Khalsa, Children's Resource Creation Group, and Kiddie Sangat, a Sikh children's play group. A little bit more about myself. So my background is in journalism. I graduated from Kingston University as a journalist in 2008. I spent approximately 7 years freelancing, working in regional news, working in sports news, and all types of different roles until 2014. In 2014, as you will all be aware, it was the 30th anniversary since the 1984 Sikh genocide. And I was working in some way, shape or form with the BBC Asian network. I saw that they were covering a lot to do with the Sikh genocide because of the 30th anniversary. And I started campaigning for them to have appropriate Sikh speakers on, one of which was the late Bhai Singh. And upon seeing this, someone who was working with Bhai Singh reached out to me and said, I'm working with him right now. And he's actually trying to do something similar to what you're doing in terms of getting the right Sikhs speaking to the media in spaces important for us. So ever since 2014, I've been working with the organization. After approximately 6 months to a year of seva, Bhai Singh ji asked me to come on board full-time to work as a senior press officer for the Sikh Press Association. And I've been doing it ever since. It's a role that I'm very passionate about, and I do want to share my experiences, which are very vast. It includes working with politicians, political groups. It involves working with media across the world, from Australia to Germany to Japan, Sweden, and of course with all different types of Sangat groups of all kinds. Okay, so with that introduction, the first thing I wanted to say is that you might not be getting the best version of me today, because recently I've had a new roommate move in. The new roommate is the loudest, messiest person that I've ever had to live with, and he's impacted my sleep greatly. Next slide. And that's my newborn son, Anok Singh. So just a little joke there, but I just wanted to share that in the sense that we're always trying to work around life experiences, and that requires a lot of effort, and that means there needs to be more of us that are working in such positions. And I'm also cheating. I wanted to stand out from the other speakers, so I thought I'd use my cute son. Next slide, please. Getting on to who the Sikh PA are, if you could click, please. I've explained myself and my role. I'm Jasveer Singh. Click, please. I'm the Senior Press Officer of the Sikh Press Association. We have Harai Kaur. That's not her real picture. Hopefully you guys can tell. We've just had her employed recently in the last month. She's assisting myself. She is a master's student of a very high academic background. My last employee was also an Oxford graduate as well. The Sikh Press Association, we're looking for the best and the brightest to come and work with us from the Sikh community. Those that are achieving high academically, we provide them with a space where they'll have a vast range of learning with us and get to build up a lot of skills that they can take forward or keep with the Sikh Press Association. And finally, we have Rupinder Kaur, who's the co-founder, giving us overseeing and guidance. Next slide, please. So as mentioned already, Everything's 13 is the charity which is behind the Sikh Press Association. They're a UK-based charity, Sav Goshtena. They fund 4 different projects which I've named: Basics of Sikhi, the Sikh Press Association, Mighty Khalsa, and Kiddy Sangat. We are one of those 4 projects. They're based in the UK. Next slide, please. We have an advisory board that are of diverse skills and different backgrounds that give us guidance as well. Next slide, please. And of course, we are founded by the late, great Bhai Jagraj Singh ji. And this is his last statement on the Sikh Press Association before he passed away. I'll just quickly read it out. What the Sikh Press Association started off trying to do, I can see it working. If Sikh PA is to grow, it needs to do more, not just here, but abroad as well. The Sikh community is a global community. So for that larger organization, we need more personnel. The growth is only going to come from Sangat support. Please do support us so we can carry on growing. Next slide, please. So our aims, this is what we were founded to do. Click, please. So firstly is to raise the public profile of Sikhs. If you ask the average person what do they know about Sikhs, a few years ago, if they knew anything at all, it would be the very basics. They might say they have beards and turbans. They might tell you that they fought in World War I and World War II for the British, for the Western Allies. They might also say stuff like, we know that they have big weddings and they like to do Bhangra. These are all very limited at best, or complete misinformation at worst when it comes to understanding the Sikh community. So we have been working since 2015, 2014 actually, to raise the public profile of Sikhs and create a greater understanding. And to my mind, that has worked. If you ask people about the Sikh community now, one of the first things they'll tell you about is seva. They say, we have seen them help with the floods. We've seen them help with the forest fires. We've seen them help with various other things. They're serving langar to the homeless in our local area. And that's something that we've tried to do. We've tried to shine a spotlight on that. Number 2 is empowering Sikhs by developing skills in media. Very simply, I'm a trained journalist. Those working with us as well are media professionals. And we try and impart those skills in the Sangat we're working with, whether that means preparation for interviews, whether that means how to write a press release, or whether that means how can we actually get a story in the media in the first place. And finally, simply providing a media source for facts, resources, and promoting articulate Sikh speakers. One of the most important things we do is, as I've said earlier, promote articulate Sikh speakers to speak to the media. Too often, we have seen the media go out and they want to know something about the Sikh community. So who do they speak to? They speak to a random politician who probably hasn't been mixing with Sangat for years. Ujjal Dosanjh in Canada, for example. They'll go and they'll speak to someone, maybe here they'll speak to Nikki Haley to find out more about the Punjabi Sikh community. And that's inappropriate. So one of the most important things we do is direct media towards speaking to the right people. Next slide, please. Examples of what we do. Anyone shout out, who's that person in the picture? Yogi Bhajan, Hanji. So about 18 months ago, we found out that HBO, probably the world's biggest production company, TV production company of documentaries and films, they're doing a documentary on Yogi Bhajan. There's been great concern for a long time within certain Sangat circles about Yogi Bhajan's reputation impinging on the Sikh Qawm because of his disguise as a practicing Sikh. Even at times he's been described as a Sikh guru. So we've been in touch with HBO and we've been come on board as advisors for this documentary, and we've been advising them of how to avoid making these mistakes of conflating Yogi Bhajan with the Sikh Qawm and with being a Sikh, and making sure that everything that he did is understood that it was not part of the ways of the Sikh community. Next slide, please. Another example of what we do. We organize events where people can come and hear from Sikh communities figures in important spaces, in public spaces. So if anyone wants to understand anything about us, they know that we're completely accessible. We're open to speaking about things publicly. This is an event we did just a couple of weeks ago. We're an official supporter of this event with CBC, Canada's biggest media organization, and various other Sikh organizations, including the World Sikh Organization of Canada. Next slide, please. Another example of what we do, like I said, we get the right people speaking to the media. Here's an interview we arranged for Bhai Singh to speak with Sky News of the UK, and this was after the revelations by Justin Trudeau about the assassination of Bhai Singh Nijjar. Bhai Singh is the head of the Khalistan Centre in BC, Surrey. Next slide, please. We have a website. On this website, you'll find various informational pages. You'll find an informational page about 1984, media-friendly page where media can go, and it's not complex. It's not 3, 4, 5 pages of information that they have to go through. No, it's one page with sufficient information that media would need and links for further reading. Along with that, we've got our own stories, our own articles. When media aren't covering something sufficiently, when stories aren't making the media as we want them to, we'll write our own stories and we'll put them up on our website. Next slide, please. And of course, we're very active on social media. Altogether, we have approximately 70,000 followers across three different platforms. We engage with the public in what is now the world's biggest platform of social media, and that is a very important way to engage with the general public and also the media themselves. They're constantly using social media to find out more about certain topics. Next slide, please. Now, I'm here today to talk about media challenges for the Panth. Why so? I feel this quote from Malcolm X, a respected civil rights activist from the US of A, he put it perfectly. He said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. Again, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed, but loving the people who are doing the oppressing. And I think that summarizes the biggest crux of the issue we face when it comes to information in the media about the Sikh community. Next slide, please. And here we see exactly what we're facing. If you can't see the picture too clearly, it's a clever way to show that the media can show a story at a different angle and the narrative changes completely. You can see one side attacking the other, but the way the camera angle is shown, that's not what the people at home are seeing. They're seeing the other side attacking the other side, and that for me really reflects the relationship with the Sikh community and the media, and of course what we face from India right now. Next slide, please. So here are some examples of that disinformation we face from India. This anti-Sikh disinformation campaign that's been ongoing for decades. All of these examples are just from this year. This is a press release from the World Sikh Organization. Earlier this year, in March, there were protests after the Punjab under siege situation, when there was the biggest manhunt in history in Punjab for Bhai Singh. In covering those protests, Indian media claimed, can you believe, they claimed that grenades were thrown at the Ottawa India High Commission. Grenades. the ridiculousness of what the Indian media will say about the Sikh community has no bounds. Next slide, please. UK-based Khalistani activists arrested for pulling down Indian flag at embassy in London. Headline from an Indian news outlet. Except, this accusation made towards Bhai Avtar Singh, Shaheed Bhai Avtar Singh Kanda, was completely false. There's video footage which shows the person that pulled down the flag, only momentarily by the way, it was not at all Avtar Singh Kanda. He was not arrested. I'm not even sure if he was even there at the protest on the day. Nevertheless, Indian media ran with this. They wanted to demonize a specific person, Shaheed Bhai Avtar Singh Kanda, and they went ahead and did it through this. They inflamed their general public. Because one thing we need to remember, next slide please. The Indian public, the general Indian public, in a country of 1.6 billion people, they have hundreds of millions of people that do not care to research about things. They don't go out of their way to learn more by reading from Saving Punjab on Instagram or reading the Sikh PA website. So whatever they are fed by the general media in India, whatever the general public are fed there, they believe, they digest. So Indian media have a free rein to do whatever they want and say whatever they want, unfortunately. And as you can see here, they even claimed that radicals, so Sikh activists, tried to burn down the San Francisco consulate earlier this year. Now, whilst there was some incidents at the Indian consulate in San Francisco, the claim that there was an attempt to burn it down is beyond ridiculous, and if it was true, the US media would be covering it even more than Indian media is. But once again, just examples of the disinformation. Next slide, please. So here's a question to you, Sangatji. Can we stop them? Can we stop India can we stop India doing this anti-Sikh disinformation campaign? Anyone? Yes or no? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Click, please. No, back and click. No, click. Okay. There we go. No. So in my experience doing this for the last 9 years, it is impossible to stop India doing what they're going to do. The Indian media are going to carry on doing what they're going to do, at least for the foreseeable future. To my mind, that's at least 10 years. There's nothing we can do to stop newspapers, the Hindustan Times, WION, Times of India, all of these outlets. There's nothing we can do to stop that misinformation coming towards us. Next slide, please. So what can we do? That's the question. What shall we do? Next slide, please. What we need to do is challenge the West's cognitive dissonance. Now, you might not be able to see these slides because the projection's a bit small, but this is a fantastic example of the cognitive dissonance of Western media. What cognitive dissonance means is that on certain occasions, the brain doesn't seem to be working. It just stops working. They're not following a pattern. Their brain just switches off, doesn't engage at a certain point. And here's a great example with the two news articles side by side. In April, Washington Post released an article which claimed supporters of Indian separatists, aka Khalistanis in other words, they're using Twitter bots to provoke violence. This was based on a research study by, guess what? An Indian nationalist body, an Indian nationalist research group. A few months later, what is the same newspaper writing? What are they putting out on their webpage, Washington Post? Now they're writing about India is running a vast digital campaign by Hindu nationalists to inflame tensions. So on one side, they're making accusations about Khalistanis using the internet in a certain way. Then they're coming back a few months later and saying the source of that information is also noted as running a disinformation campaign on social media. So this is like saying, I heard you're a liar. Who told you that? This other person. Which other person? This other person that's known to lie a lot. It doesn't make sense. And this is how we actually hold Western media to account. And it's begun to happen this year, Sangataji. Organically, through Maharaj's Kirpa, this year, circumstances have made Western media take a step back and realize if they're taking information from Indian media, if they're taking any information from India at all, whether it's from the police, whether it's from their own sources, that information is tainted. Next slide, please. How is it tainted? Here's an example of how. Reporters Without Borders is a largely European-based organization of reporters that go around the world trying to encourage press freedom, either doing that job themselves or doing rankings of how free press is around the world. For the last at least 2 or 3 years, Indian media press freedom rankings have continually dropped. This year, 2023, Indian media is ranked 161st of 180 countries for press freedom. Even the Taliban of Afghanistan are considered to be giving the press more press freedom than India. Next slide, please. So, sorry, previous slide, if you can go back one. So these are the type of things we need to be raising with with Western media, when it comes to that disinformation. We can't stop the disinformation coming from India, but what we can do is when it lands here, we can challenge it immediately. We can say, here's proof of issues of disinformation campaigns. We have various studies. The Sikh Press Association, we did a research study with a group called the Center for Information Resilience. They found a vast network of fake Sikh profiles using Twitter. We've done another study, an article on an app called Bhai, which was out in India, where this is a quote from an Indian journalist. Upper caste, higher educated Hindus were running fake Sikh profiles, calling themselves things like Khalsa supremacist, things of that nature, and they were saying the horrible things about like Muslim women and the kind to denigrate the Sikh community. And we need to raise things like this. When we know press, if tomorrow Seattle Times are going to write something about India, if tomorrow an article comes out about information about something that's happening in Punjab to do with the Khalistan movement, we need to challenge them and say, are you aware of how press freedom is ranked in India? Have you double-checked your sources? Have you spoken to your local Sikh community about how this is taken in? That's what we need to be doing. Next slide, please. The next challenge, social media censorship. We all know there's social media censorship that we face. Just a couple of weeks ago, I sent Gurpreet Singh of Saving Punjab a video. I showed him that his tag of Saving Punjab, it doesn't come up when searched on my laptop and Twitter. Next slide, please. Couple of examples of the social media censorship. Did you know that the word shaheed is the most moderated term on Instagram and Facebook? Shaheed, it's written there that this is an Arabic term. We know better. We know who's going to be using that word more frequently than any other group. Maybe not as much because we're outnumbered by the Muslim community by about 1,000,000 to 1, but we would be using it more prominently. And that word being moderated more than any others says a lot about where the focus of Instagram and Facebook is. The next picture talks about censorship on Twitter, and finally the article at the bottom highlights how in 2020 the hashtag Sikh, the very word Sikh, was censored itself on Facebook and Instagram in 2020. Next slide, please. Can we do anything about it? This one's a bit different. This one's yes, but no. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's how it is yes. Yes, because what do these entities care about? Only their reputation. In 2020, when the Sangat found out, when Sikhs around the world found out that the word Sikh was censored off Facebook and Instagram, there was such an uproar that for the first time, these massive corporations, some of the biggest corporations to have ever existed, the most influential corporations arguably ever, they came to us suddenly. Suddenly they were running to the Sikh community when their reputation got smashed, and they were saying, we want to talk to you now. Can we organize an event where we sit together and we're going to learn from you? Why did they do that? It wasn't because Sikh PA was sending them email after email talking about their censorship, which we still do to this day. It was because publicly their reputation was tarnished. Once their reputations get damaged, that's when we see them jump up. Because make no mistake, Sangatji, it's not that they want to do the right thing, but they want to be seen to do the right thing. Again, they don't want to do the right thing, they don't care, but they want to be seen to be doing the right thing. We can attack their reputations about this censorship, and we can make them jump up and react for us. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What else do we do? When I also said no, there's actually not much we can do about it. In 2020, after that censorship occurred, Facebook invited the Sikh Press Association and several other organizations, maybe some representatives in this room today, to speak to them directly. We've had a relationship ever since with some of Facebook's most senior people when it comes to policy about the censorship issue. I would say 95% of what we have raised with them, they've ignored. But like I said, when we attack their reputation, they jump up for us. Now, what we need to know is if we validate our own spaces, if we say the information the Sikh community holds most valuable is on savingpunjab.com, it's on the World Sikh Parliament website, that's where it is, then they're going to have to come to us. So we can influence them, but it's not by directly, it's by our own action. Next slide, please. I'm wrapping, okay, no problem. The final point. I just mentioned 2 points. I could go on forever about the media challenges we face. What's the answer to taking that on? It's about challenging ourselves. Next slide, please. We don't have a Bantik English news channel on YouTube. There are studies now that say the majority of people, when they find out about a news story, their next step is to go on social media, which includes YouTube and TikTok, and they search that story on those platforms. We do not have an English language Bantik news channel on YouTube yet. We are desperate for that. The amount of misinformation about the Khalsa Bant that's on YouTube is incredible. We need to challenge that. We need to penetrate feature columns. We need writers. We have skilled, educated people, as we know. We need them churning out articles regularly and reaching out to your New York Times, your Washington Post. All of these outlets, they have opinion columns. Our opinions matter too. Our opinions matter too, Sangatji. We should have no hesitancy to step forward and say, take forward our opinion. Have our opinion featured in your column. But what does that require? That requires work. That requires people to be actually writing those articles quickly and efficiently as possible. Last thing, we need full-time staff doing this. People can't do it in their breaks. Media moves quick. If a news story breaks right now, if something happens in this very hall, by tomorrow afternoon it might not be a news story. So if we haven't given the media everything they want from it, they won't want to hear from us. So Sangatji, I'll wrap up there. I got through this as quick as I could. My contact information is there, Jasveer Singh. Of course, the main thing that we can all do to step forward and challenge issues, including the media, is with our own Bani, is with our own Naam, and is with joining with the Khalsa Panth. If you do have any questions, please do reach out. I'll be hanging around for a while. Sangat ji, Vaheguru ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki Fateh.